Hello and welcome to the Turn 4 podcast. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. This podcast comes from two lifelong fans of IndyCar and other forms of motorsport. Before I get started, I gotta introduce my co-host, Tim Reiner. Hey, Timmy.
Hello, Dan.
How are you?
I was good until I got on the call and I looked at your sweatshirt, but otherwise I'm good.
This will make you feel better.
No, it doesn't. It just, like I said, it just puts salt in the wound. So I'm really disappointed. And are you? Oh my gosh, she's got the fight song. The Michigan fight song is playing. It's very hard to hear, but it is on there.
Here, let me help you.
Oh, there it is. Oh, geez. I think everybody just tuned out of the show. What a terrible game.
Depends on your perspective.
That is true.
You know, I didn't read it. I didn't watch the game, of course, because it isn't my thing. I did watch the end of it, and that was seemingly the best part. The last couple minutes or whatever. Yeah.
It was no fun. I was
visiting my son and his lovely girlfriend in Toledo. And
nice.
And then we came home and took a little nap, and then I watched.
I'm going to be at the Rockets game on Sunday. Or on Saturday.
Good for you. Where are they at? Oh, MAC Championship, right?
Yeah, MAC Championship downtown.
Where are they
Fort
playing?
Field. I'm going to support my alma mater.
Who are they playing?
Some Miami of Ohio. I don't know. Some other Ohio.
Is it Miami of Ohio?
I don't know if it is, honestly. I'd have to look it up.
It's wonderful. So glad you brought it up. It's compelling.
Yeah, it is very compelling.
We are an IndyCar podcast. We've got to cover some F1, Timmy.
We are. We're going to do that. I think my camera's dirty, by the way. I think I can clear it.
You just smudge it. It helps your focus.
It helps my focus. I feel like I'm a little foggy today.
30-24, Tim. Wolverines take 3 in a row and advance to the Big Ten Championship in Indianapolis this coming weekend against Iowa.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there, right?
This is the last. This is the last Big Ten championship season as we know it. There'll be no East and West next year. It'll just be your two top teams, which could possibly be Michigan and Ohio State 2 weekends in a row. So there you have it. There's the football segment of our F1 show for our IndyCar podcast.
We're so confused in the off season, folks. We don't know what to talk about, so we're just going to talk about whatever.
Abu Dhabi Formula One season finale 2023, episode 87, Timothy.
Wow, 87.
It is.
We're catching everybody.
Yep.
Well, maybe. We'll see.
It's all over, Tim. The season has been maxed out.
Definitely maxed out.
Definitely maxed out. I don't know what you think about this race or anything to do with this season. I don't think you can really do any of that without talking about the dominance of Red Bull Racing and Max Verstappen. 860 points, Tim, for Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship, which is 45 points more than the next two constructors combined. Look at this.
That's crazy. You got balloons going.
I don't even know what's going on here with this. I have all that virtual stuff turned off, but you know, if you're watching on the YouTube, the balloons just went through. I don't know.
Last week we had some clapping or thumbs up or something that hit your screen, and I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, we'll do it now. Yeah. Red Bull won 21 of 22 races. That's unreal. Max wins 19 races, Perez 2, and Carlos Sainz 1.
Yeah.
For Ferrari, the only non-Red Bull win of the season. Max led 1,000 laps this season, most in history, I believe, Timmy.
Yeah, for sure. Totally more. Why are you looking at me like that? I was waiting for more balloons.
Try to figure out what you got going on over there. Mercedes takes second, which to me is a shock. I mean, off the top of my head, I would say that Ferrari had a better season.
I would
too. But yeah, you would agree with that, right?
Yeah,
but Leclerc
totally
started wrecky. And then, of course, he handed that off to Sainz, who finished wrecky. Ferrari takes third, only 3 points behind Mercedes. To me, this was lost in Vegas, Tim. I don't know how you feel about it. With Carlos's crash, which, again, I said he was wrecky, but the Las Vegas situation was no fault of Carlos's. That was definitely a track problem. But to me, I think that second place in this Constructors' Championship was sealed.
Yeah, because there's only a few points
yeah.
difference at that point.
3.
3?
Yep.
Yeah, that's hardly anything.
Yep. McLaren finishes 4th, which is 22 points ahead of Aston Martin, which again, shock, because Aston Martin started out with a really good Formula 2 team at the start of this season, and then they came around. Tim, in a way, I don't think I've seen happen in modern F1 history. Since we've been watching this since 90. Well, I've been watching since the early 90s. There's been a couple of situations where teams have completely thrown away the chassis that they started their seasons with and gone with a new chassis. That's back in the day. You can just keep throwing money at it all you want. You can't do that now. Mm-hmm. But McLaren seemingly turned it around mid-season in a way that I think shocked everybody in the paddock.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because they started off really slow. I wonder if you put the two teams together, take the first half of Aston Martin, take the second half of McLaren, put those point totals together, where do they end up in the championship?
That is a great question.
And I was going to do the analysis, but I got so sidetracked.
I get tired.
Yeah, I got tired.
The second half of the season for McLaren was definitely similar to the first half of the season for Aston. Aston Martin was nowhere to be found that second half. They were completely lost.
Terrible. And I think it comes to still investing in the team and doing updates, right? I don't know how many they had coming to the car after they launched it, and they were good. And then, McLaren had always said that their updates weren't ready, right? By the start of the season, and by mid-season, they were doing really well. So they brought all that technology in and the changes that they needed to be quick. So if you put those two together, I'm very curious where they end up for the points this year, for sure.
Yeah. Aston seemed to lose their way, right? I mean, we knew that there was a situation with the car and some of the upgrades were going in a different direction. And I think by the time they recognized that the upgrades weren't translating on track, it was late. Yeah. And then they started to rebound here, I think, maybe after Mexico or whatever, starting in Mexico, and they had a decent rebound, but they lost their way. McLaren started completely out of it, but they set the expectation that they weren't going to do anything, and then was able to pick up the season. Ferrari was always lurking. And I think that Ferrari turned it around with their tire degradation, had a pretty decent season going through it. Ferrari's problem was Ferrari, right? I think that
it always seems to be.
Always seems to be, with the stretch, even this weekend. And I know that Fred Vasseur tried to say that it wasn't the strategy that lost it. It kind of was, right? By the time they pitted Sainz to get him off those long run on the hard tires, it was too late to do anything with that. He ended up scoring no points. All the points came from Leclerc.
It's a terrible strategy.
Yeah,
why would
Hamilton
you put him on two sets of hard compound and then wait to the very end to put him on medium?
Yeah, they were waiting for a safety car or virtual safety car or something to come that just never came, and it just ruined the whole thing. Carlos, of course, had a wreck in practice. They had to fix the car again, lost some running time. So that kind of stuff, I think, puts you behind. Qualifying effort was bad because they didn't have any track time, and track time was limited. There was a number of incidents on track.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of drivers that were in FP1 that were regular drivers as all their test drivers and rookie drivers, whatever you want to call it. So there was limited track time, even when it came to FP2, when there was the red flag and things of that sort. So yeah. But I want to kind of go back to Mercedes. You're right.
I was just going to say,
second in the constructors championship, but
stunning.
They complained all year on how terrible, how terrible the car is, and you're second. But to your point, they're way off pace to Red Bull. Way off pace when you figure the two second place teams' points don't even add up to Red Bull's constructors' points. Yeah,
so nowhere near it.
You said there was a 45-point delta, I believe. So
yeah, even with it, right? They combined, they're still 45 points behind. So,
but at the same time, they got record crowds, they got record events. Everything looks great from an attendance standpoint and publicity, and the racing just isn't there.
Is just not great. right? I mean, the racing is not great. Vegas raced better than we anticipated. Vegas racing. We talked
Best
about
race of
that.
the year.
Totally. I think, you have some flashes like that, but your championship is wrapped up. You kind of know who's going to win this thing. It's very expensive to go. I think the people that go, I think there's a lot of people that go and attend this thing are going to just attend it just to be there, right? Just to see it and see what it's like versus go in there with the expectations that they're going to see, some really cool track activity or some really great racing. I just don't think that happens. I think dominance, though, I think these periods of domination are kind of normal in Formula One. I think looking back at it, right, you have the period of domination by Ferrari with Michael Schumacher, and then you have like that little Braun blip, right? And then you've got, you go into Red Bull with Vettel, and then you go into Mercedes with Hamilton. Got one little Rosberg blip there, right? With that, and then you've got, you're dominating again with Red Bull 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Who do you think is, in your mind, the most optimistic headed into 2024? And I'll give you the 4 teams, right? Mercedes, Aston, Ferrari, or McLaren. Obviously, you see my notes, but tell me who you think is the most optimistic going into next season.
Yeah, I think it's got to be McLaren. I think you've come out of this season very strong. You had a poor running in Las Vegas, but when you look at the second half of the season, they were quick. They were definitely quick with 1 laps. They struggled a little bit over the duration of some runs. But I feel like they've got things sort of moving in the right direction. They got a Mercedes power plant, right? So I think they can go into next season learning from what worked versus other teams that I don't think they just kind of trudged through the season and didn't have any big upgrades that really made a difference for them, at least when it came to the running for second, third, fourth, right?
Yeah.
So that's who I think headed into 2024 has got the best outlook for being up there and being able to battle with potentially Red Bull.
Right. I'm giving a slight edge to Ferrari over McLaren because I would put Ferrari first. I would put McLaren right behind them. I'm just giving a slight edge to Ferrari because I think Ferrari's package is a little bit better than McLaren. I think McLaren, aero-wise, had trouble keeping their car cool. And I think from just a pure pace standpoint, they don't have the same pace that Ferrari does on long stretches, on your in DRS and everything else. I give a slight edge to Ferrari because I think they're working with a really good package right now. They've got some things they got to work out from the car, obviously. Strategy, a lot they've got to work out with, which I think McLaren has a little better strategy. To me, and I want to know how you feel about this, the greatest unknown for me going into next season is Mercedes. Because I just don't know. They are going to have a dramatic change in car philosophy. They've stuck to this zero side pod or whatever they're calling it, right? The zero side pod for the last couple of seasons. It obviously didn't work. They tried an early season change this year when they realized, all right, we got to do away with this. And so they're going to have to come in 24 with a completely different car. Mercedes or Aston Martin, which we didn't talk about yet, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren are all going to come with evolutions of cars that are pretty decent platforms. And we think they're pretty decent platforms right now. Yeah. So Mercedes is starting out next year, again, unknown.
Yeah.
But this second place is actually to their detriment. They're going to get less wind tunnel time, less CFD time than what Ferrari will get. So they're already starting out kind of in the back foot. They got the 10 million, which is great, right? Second place, you'll take the finish, of course, right? Best of the rest. But you'd almost rather have the wind tunnel in the CFD, right?
Maybe, but I do remember that they had said mid-season or near early in the season that they found the issue, but it was structural within, and maybe that's not the right word, but structural within the car that they couldn't make the change.
Architecture. Yeah, they can't.
Yeah, it was a part of the architecture. So I think they found the issue. So I would be surprised if they don't come out and are vying for podium positions right off the bat, if that's what they found. And maybe there's going to be other things that they haven't found that are going to kind of rear their ugly head during the beginning of the season. But I'm sort of optimistic, thinking that they would be close to McLaren coming out of the gate for 2024. And then you got Ferrari and then Aston behind that, in my opinion. Obviously, Red Bull being first, but
yeah. And you're completely on the bandwagon that Red Bull's just going to start out of the gate in 24 ready to go, right?
Oh yeah, I think they're going to be ready to go. I don't think. I think I read something. It was something you typed, but I read something that they didn't make many changes.
No, not since August.
Not since August to the car, and you could see that. I know. And so, what are you doing that whole time? You're working on your 2024 car, so I don't see any reason that they're not going to come out of the gate and be really good again.
Yeah. So for me, out of the four of those, I have Ferrari one, slightly, just by a hair ahead of McLaren, Mercedes third, Aston fourth, only because can they really be Mercedes, can they really be this bad off of this 7-season domination? They've got a little break here, but it's like, can they really be where they're at? And then Aston has to figure out what they're doing, right? They lost some of their way earlier this season, kind of makes me question some things there, right? Like, what are they looking at? How are they analyzing the data? So that's where that is. Let me throw a dark horse at you. AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri will have a new name in 2024. We don't know what it is. They have a couple of American sponsors is the only thing that we keep hearing. But they're going to use as many off-the-shelf Red Bull parts from the main team as the regulations will allow. Yeah. And they were pretty good. Once they switched to the Red Bull rear end, right, of this car several weeks ago, this car came alive. So where do you think they fit there?
Well, they could come out of the gate, but they're like the sister car to Red Bull.
Always will be. Yep.
Yeah, so they can't be that good, right? So you wonder where they sort of slot in. But if they're using parts, as you had mentioned, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, at least just off the podium, I would say. I wouldn't say on the podium, but just off. But I sort of heard their name was going to be Racing Bull?
Bulls?
Is that
Racing Bulls or something? Yeah, I heard
Racing
that too.
Bulls? I did hear
I'm hoping that's really bad. Like, that was a horrible rumor that somebody planted on purpose. What I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see. But do you feel they're going to be a force to be reckoned with coming out?
I do. I really do. I think that they're going to give fits to your third and fourth place teams, be it Mercedes, be it, Ferrari, Aston Martin. I think they're going to give fits there. Daniel Ricciardo is decent, right? We know that he's coming back. Yuki Tsunoda has been on that team for a long time, so he should hit the ground running as well. My issue with Yuki is he's just immature, right? Greatly immature, very immature. So,
did you see that he was the first,
just kind of a goofball,
the second Japanese driver to lead a Formula One race, and who was number? Yeah. I was surprised to hear that. That was pretty cool.
I know, second one. That was crazy. And you think about it, because I remember Takuma Sato in Formula One, but I don't. Right? It's been so long. I don't think of him as being a Formula One driver at all. So think about the gap between Sato leading a Formula One race and Yuki Tsunoda doing it this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a long time.
Crazy. Yeah. Those are the teams with the highest expectations. I know there's more, but we could exhaust all the teams, but I don't think we really need to. I would tell you, Tim, that there's two teams that come to mind if you want to talk about those that concern me. And the first one that comes to mind is Alpine. And I think that it starts with the drivers, right? The drivers obviously do not like each other. They're having trouble functioning as a team, these drivers. A lot of complaints. We're switching positions, and then they want to know why, right? And it doesn't matter who it is, if it's Gasly or if it's Ocon. Why? What's going? And then it's, well, why did you pit Ocon? Well, why did you pit Gasly ahead of me? Right? Everything is being second guessed with this team constantly, and that's going to fester.
I think that comes down to management. You got to say you're number one, you're number two, and this is how we're going to do it. So if you feel like you weren't on the optimal strategy. It's because you're the number 2 driver, and
or you're neither, right? We are on the pit wall seeing everything that's happening. So when we tell you we're switching you, it's for a reason. It's because the data and everything else suggests it's better to have Ocon in front, or it's better to have Gasly in front.
Yeah.
Right. This is what they have to tell them right off the bat. You're neither.
Yeah.
Right. You're neither number 1. You're neither number 2. It's how the race transpires throughout the weekend.
And as long as the drivers are clear, then there should be no questions coming back to what you mentioned. Yeah. That, they should be like, okay, whatever. But they're competitive. They don't want to give that up, right?
No, of course.
And if you don't set it clearly in the office, if you will, then out on track, anything goes. And it's interesting how some of the drivers talk to the guy in the stand. I
know it's terrible.
It is. It's
hard.
Demeaning in some aspects.
Yeah, it's harsh. Think about this too. I mean, Gasly does he really want to be there? Right? I mean, he was removed out of AlphaTauri for Liam Lawson, who got booted mid-season for Daniel Ricciardo. Mm-hmm. And the team was trying to plug Oscar Piastri into that seat, and McLaren had already taken him under contract. So it's kind of like Gasly's plugged into a situation where he was the next man up, so to speak, or kind of the default guy, right? Not really who we wanted, but we'll take you. And then, he was booted out of AlphaTauri. So of course there's that, right? And Ocon was there first. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure Ocon feels a certain sense of he's number 1, right? Whether he is or not. I don't think he is, and I don't think Gasly is either, but that's the problem. That will fester. So good luck with that, Alpine. Second, and we already know this because they talked about it earlier in the season, their engine is not up to par to Ferrari, Red Bull powertrains, and Mercedes. They're not at that same level. So they're behind. They've withdrawn their request for kind of a review so they can do. So I'm sure that they found a loophole in the rules they think is going to get them, up to closer to where they need to be. But Tim, this team they're okay. I can't think of any place where I think they're necessarily good.
Yeah. I don't either. Like, I don't even consider them being in the hunt for anything in the championship, right? They're a midfield to backfield marker.
Yeah. Top of the midfield, right? Like, I feel like they're kind of like the top of the midfield. They're going to get pushed down because AlphaTauri will be better. Mm-hmm. So they'll get pushed down 1. Williams, Tim, it's possible Williams could exceed, Alpine next year. So
it is possible. Yeah.
That's another thing. The second team that concerns me a little bit, Tim, is Haas. And I think that it's obvious to me this team's operating with the slimmest budget and certainly isn't even living up to the budget cap. Mm-mm. Right? They very little in terms of development. They're buying everything they can from Ferrari off the shelf, which is fine. But
why can't they find sponsorship? Why is it all Haas automation? Like,
they found this MoneyGram or whatever. They had the Rich Energy, which was a mess, and then they had the money from Nikita Mazepin.
Yeah, they had that at times.
It's always been like the snake oil salesmen, right? Always kind of, except for MoneyGram. I mean, this is very legit, but they always seem to kind of fall for for these little scam kind of things, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, we'll put you on the side of the car, and then it's like, there you go.
Yeah, and they don't pay,
and Haas is not spending the money.
No,
there's no way to do Formula One cheap. You know the cheapest way to do Formula One? Don't do Formula One.
Yeah. It's disappointing. It's an American team, and
that's my next question. Do you consider this the American team?
Well, that's what they are, but
are they?
I don't know. That's what they claim to be. You think if it was an American team, you'd have an American driver in there. You'd really push to do well. You don't want to finish 10th in the constructors championship. That's terrible. The last several seasons has been terrible. So I don't know what comes out of this team, honestly. I don't. They're a non-contender when it comes to races. And that's really all I got to say about us.
And one of the loudest voices against Andretti.
Just insane.
Because they're getting $60 million guaranteed to finish last. Then they would get what, 54 or 52 million to finish last?
But come on. Up your
so
game.
Gene would have to come up with the 8 million to plug the hole.
Yeah, well, he's got the money, but you
totally got the money.
Yeah, I don't understand that at all. Like, if you should be embracing another team coming in, especially if another American team promoting American drivers, which they don't.
And a engine manufacturer who's never been part of the Formula One World Championship.
Yeah, it's terrible,
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we solved it, Timmy. Drivers. Can we talk a little bit about drivers? My favorite subject.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
I know you disagree, and that's why I want to start right here. Carlos Sainz has 2 wins over the past 2 seasons with Ferrari. Charles Leclerc has no wins. Sainz is better. That's not a question. That's a statement.
There's
Sainz
a question mark. Sainz is not better.
That question mark is for you. The period is from me.
Oh, yeah, no. Sainz, even with his 2 wins, he still hasn't finished as well in the championship over the past 3 years, right? And then I sort of tried to figure out who was number 1 at the team and how it sort of works out. And Google, I agree with Google, by the way. It says it's Leclerc, and it's Leclerc. Did
you say like, Alexa, who's the best driver in the Ferrari Formula One team?
No, I just did a Google search. I just sat on this computer that's sitting right in front of me, and I said, who's the top driver in the F1 program? Who's the number 1 driver of the F1 program? And so it was Leclerc. And so I had to think about this a minute. And so I had to do a little research. Leclerc has finished, this is in the Drivers' Championship, 7th, 2nd, and 5th over the last 3 years, while Sainz has finished 5th, and 7th. So if you look at the averages, Dan, Leclerc has 4.6 average finish in the championship, while Sainz has a 5.6, 1 position difference. So there you have it. Facts don't lie. Numbers don't lie.
How about those facts? Where do those facts factor?
Wins are great, and they do help the team, but at the end of the day, you need to be consistent over a long season to do well in the championship, and the numbers show that Leclerc is better.
Yeah.
I agree winning is important, right? And it's a close battle. Honestly, you could say either one's number 1 in my real opinion, but I wanted to disagree.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. I like what Sainz is doing there, but I think you're right. I think potential longer term right, the higher ceiling is with Sainz or with Leclerc.
Yeah.
The wins though, similar to like what you see at McLaren, right? Oscar Piastri won that sprint race and had a number of races where he featured, right? Was kind of the feature at McLaren. So it's got to make you feel about Lando Norris. Daniel Ricciardo was fired out of that team. Daniel Ricciardo has a win at that team. Mm-hmm. Lando Norris is still in search of a win, sprint win or otherwise. Right?
Yes, that is true.
So it kind of makes you feel like, right? Lando Norris might have the higher ceiling of those 2 drivers, but Oscar Piastri is looking at some construction work right now, looking at how he raises that ceiling. Mm-hmm. So, be on the lookout. I think wins do mean a lot to me. And I think sometimes it's luck and sometimes there's a lot of other things, but I think wins mean something. Speaking of wins, we got a guy who's had a couple of wins. He's took 2nd in the championship, and his job was on the line earlier this year, Tim. Right? Sergio Perez, Checo, back with Red Bull next year, Timmy. Yay or nay?
Absolutely. Yes, he's back. Not a chance he's leaving.
This is the first time in their history that they finished 1st and 2nd in Drivers' Championship. Which is amazing.
I know, it's totally amazing. He wasn't as close as he should have been to his teammate. He had some issues, but I think he's rectified those. He's gone through the counseling he needed to just be in a good mental state, and I think he gets another year out of it. He's still got 1 year on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. And he's improved 1 position in the championship year over year. So a 4th, 3rd, and now a 2nd. So I don't think you boot him unless you don't boot him. You just don't do it. I don't think you
boot him at all. Yeah. No. You don't want to keep him around for 25. That's fine. But the guy has done everything he can to continue to earn that spot. right? If you got to move on from him or whatever at the end of this contract, then you move on from him. I think somebody will pick him up. I'd plug him in place of Lance Stroll, to be honest with you, alongside a 50-year-old Alonso. I don't care, but that's what I would do. Anyway, I don't want to get ahead of myself.
He's 40.
Yeah. Max, 4-time champ next year?
Absolutely. Most definitely. Yes.
You really think so?
There's no way anybody's beating Max next year. No way. Remember at the beginning of this season, you asked me
if,
perfect. If Perez had a shot at the championship.
Yeah.
And I gave it a 0.01%.
0.00. Yep.
Yeah. And it's going to be 0.01. I give him, a little bit. And so
slight chance.
I think it's the same scenario. No one's going to touch Max again. I don't think anybody is. If you stop development on your car in August, you've been working on your 2024 package. You've already got it figured out. The rules aren't changing, right?
You think, but they were doing something in free practice 3 in Abu Dhabi this weekend where Max's car was horrible. So they were trialing something, is my suspicion. They were trialing something, and it was bad. Yeah. So, but no, you're right. I think the odds are, that Max is penciled in for that. I don't know who really will rise to that challenge. It's certainly,
if McLaren gets it absolutely right, which is hard to think they would, when you look at just the gap this year, and if you think Mercedes comes out with their fix that they found with the architecture of the car, they could come out. I don't think Ferrari's there. I know you believe they're the second place team. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I do. Alonso, when does Father Time catch up to this guy? 42 years old, like you said.
Yep.
When does the performance drop off?
I don't know. When the youngest watcher in my house watches the races and goes, Alonso was really good for how old he is. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
To me, he reminds me of Mario Andretti. He raced to 51, 54, whatever it was, and was still fairly competitive up there. But man, he's good. And he's smart. He knows what to do on track. And who knows? You put him in a really quick car, who knows what's going to happen with him?
Yeah.
You would think, though, you'd already be Father Time would be catching up.
Fall off a little bit. Yeah.
You would think, but I don't see it.
Yeah, he's quick. He's quick in interviews. He's quick on his feet. He's quick physically. He's quick, in the car. The guy is just clicking, right? Great genes, and obviously takes care of himself. I mean, it's just, he's an anomaly. Speaking of an anomaly, but not in the best way, Lance Stroll. I get that Dad's name's on the building. Should the team send Lance to WEC and plug in a hot rookie or proven vet?
I don't think it's good.
It ain't gonna happen. But do you think that? To me, I think that is what they should do, because you got one guy scoring points on that team consistently, and if you're going to start favoring the owner's kid over the wily veteran, then you're just going to flush that program right down the toilet.
I think the hope is that the wily veteran can teach Lance a few things, but if you're slow, you're slow. You just don't have it.
You don't get it. You don't get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's anything more than that. And they're not setting the cars up differently, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Instincts, right? You can't teach instincts.
Yeah,
you can teach some
reflexes,
fundamental things, but you can't teach instincts. And I think that's what I think Lance sort of lacks that. I think he lacks some of that. I think his instinct is not great. I mean, we've seen him defend in ways that is very, very dangerous, causing some incidents and some things like that. And I think those instincts aren't the ones that you want to nurture, obviously.
Yeah.
But if he hasn't gotten it by now, I don't know that he will, right? If Lance Stroll were on the open market, do you think that somebody would be offering him a contract?
I don't think so.
Me neither.
Mm-mm. That goes to some others in IndyCar that I would think if they were on the open market and not driving for their father at a point in time, they would probably not get picked up either.
Yeah. That's funny. I was totally on that page, and I didn't want to go there because I'm always piling on him, and he too suffered the Ohio State loss this weekend, so I didn't want to pile
on. Yeah, there's that one that's still racing, but there's one that isn't racing anymore. That's kind of in that same boat. Kind of one of the famous names.
Oh, he just keeps coming back every year and taking a spot right at the 500. Mm-hmm. To do nothing but complain about.
Which, if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? It's not dig. It is what it is, and you move on and try different things.
Daniel Ricciardo, I'm still in wait and see mode. I want to see how good the AlphaTauri is next year, or whatever they're going to call themselves. That's number one. I want to see if he can rise to the occasion as well. He had one great race in Mexico, and they were penciling him in place of Perez, which cracks me up, right? But since that time, he's gone 13th in Brazil, 14th in Las Vegas, and 11th in Abu Dhabi. No points, none. So using your theory about a Sainz or Leclerc over Sainz, Tsunoda, went 12th place in Mexico, 9th place in Brazil. He had a DNF in Vegas, which wasn't his fault. And then 8th in Abu Dhabi, 6 points.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan, but those are results over the same period against the teammate that came in that, is all popular and everybody talks about, and they were penciling him in place of Perez and everything else. And it's
I feel Ricciardo's good for F1 though. I feel he's got
his personality's good for Formula One, but
his on-track performance is
$80 million program.
How many wins does he have? 10 or 11 in his career?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think that many.
Yeah, I think he does. I think he's got more than you would think that he does. And so I think he's a great driver. And I don't know if I could put him ahead of Tsunoda, but at the same time, Ricciardo's just getting back into it. He got placed in that seat, and I think he's good. I don't think he should go anywhere. He should just be out there running.
Didn't really prove anything at Renault. Are you looking it up?
I'm trying.
Good. Okay. Didn't prove anything at Renault. Got himself fired at McLaren. So, somebody saw something. I'm not saying he's worthless, but I'm just saying, just slow down. Let's pump the brakes on the old, Daniel Ricciardo thing. Alex Albon found, it's funny. I saw the graphic over the weekend. Here's a tangent for you. Alexander Albon. I never think of him that way. I think of Alex Albon. Yeah. Alex Albon and Alexander Rossi, because I never think of Alex Rossi, right? It's Alexander Rossi and Alex Albon. I don't think, so there's a little tangent.
8 wins.
How many?
8.
Wah. Found a home with Alex Albon found a home with Williams, and if it were me, Tim, I would stay there as long as they would let me. I wouldn't jump to another team somewhere else. Somebody, much improved AlphaTauri. Oh, we want you back. No, stay right there. 8th place in the constructors standings, largely on the back of what Albon did. Albon is going to write his own ticket at Williams because he's getting it done.
Yep.
And next year, like I said, hey, if I were, Alpine, I'd be looking over my shoulder. You got 2 teams coming at you fast.
Yep.
Right.
And who knows who's going to be his teammate next year, right? That's still up for grabs.
Yeah, Logan Sargent, I thought was sort of settled in that situation, but it doesn't seem to be now, right?
I think I read it somewhere, but
now some question about it.
Yeah.
But
something changed.
Yeah, somebody's available, right? It's got to be.
Yeah.
It's somebody's available or something's going on there. I bet you is what it is. So
For sure.
Sorry, I got to make a change here. Hold on.
He's got to switch out his coffee, folks. He's going from one cup to the next. And he's got his lovely assistant.
She's not here yet.
Screen,
but I got yeah. And finally, Lewis Hamilton, worried that Red Bull haven't updated their RB19 since August, meaning he thinks it could be a repeat next season. And Tim, you agree with that? We've long established that.
Yep.
I think, I want to know what you believe. Do you think Hamilton spends too much time worrying about what goes on at Red Bull?
Yeah, but I think he wants to get championship number 8, so he's very vested in what goes on over there because that's the team he knows he has to beat. He feels he can beat everybody else. But yeah, I agree. He's way in their business, and if he could tap their phones, I think he would, just to understand what's going on.
He's living rent free, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that head. But I just find that strange. Somebody with that career, is that overly, and that could be what it is, right? He might have lost a little bit of confidence in the team, might have lost a little confidence in the team to go forward and take it to red, because he's seen these periods of domination, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's right, clock's ticking for him.
Yeah.
And we've seen the last two contract negotiations between him and Mercedes, they went a little long. And I think that if you asked George Russell honestly, do you believe that did you believe that he would have been here going into 26? Let's say, for example, I think George would have been like, no, he'd been gone.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot out there, which I think for the 7-time champ is weighing on his mind, and it starts with Red Bull, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, starts and ends with Red Bull, and even looking over the cars after events and just kind of studying them, if you will.
Yep. I'm sure he believes
they could be missing.
that last championship, or that first championship of Max, was stolen from him. And I think that goes right down the line, right? 50-50 on that. I think you believe it was stolen from him. I don't.
I do.
So there's that. And I think that weighs on him heavily. And I think that'll continue to until maybe he gets his 8th championship.
Mm-hmm.
Or until he knows he gets back into, a Mercedes that is worthy of taking it to the championship. So stuff. Anyone else stand out to you, Timmy? I didn't really talk about George Russell George.
No, well, he didn't. And I was really a fan. And I've sort of wavered off of that a little bit. He seems fat. The Mercedes car either seems to fit Lewis or it fits George, but it never both of them, right? That something's going on there. And you feel there's team dynamics that aren't great with that happens over at Mercedes with the two drivers, because they don't appear in events together very rarely, and they kind of seem to be doing their own thing. But Lewis is kind of otherworldly, sort of, and I think George is just down to business, but sometimes in a whiny way, and I didn't enjoy how he was on the radio with his team during the race, like asking him what does that really mean, right? He was asking about the championship battle, and they weren't giving him a clear answer, and so he was kind of up in arms. So I think he's got talent for sure, right? He's sort of up there, but we'll see if Mercedes comes out with a good car next year. It'll be curious to see how that sort of evolves, that relationship, and what happens with performance on track between the two, and maybe that dictates how they interact with each other, right? If George is taking it to Lewis, that'd be not very good for the team dynamics, I believe.
Right. I think that those two are, just so far apart in personality and the things that they do and how they present themselves. I think that's part of why you don't see this super close camaraderie with it, right? Mm-hmm. I think that what I said earlier is I think George would have believed that Lewis either would have been gone by now or sort of had an exit plan, right? Where George can come in there and be number one. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of that. I don't, and I've said this and I said it last pod, I don't know what they tell George, right? I don't know what they tell George in debriefings. I don't know what they tell him in the race prep and everything else, because he seems to have an even higher opinion of himself and his ability and his planned finishes in these races than what actually comes to fruition, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like George needs a little bit of a reality check. He's fast. I think he has some talent, but I think he needs a little bit of a reality check, right? There's a lot of really good drivers around you, dude. It's the reason why you're in Formula One, mm-hmm. right? So it's like, check that ego a little bit.
Yep.
Okay.
There's only 20 of you.
Right. Talk about next year. Okay. There are places where George has been demonstrably faster than Lewis. And I know that these cars haven't been great the last couple of seasons, but there's going to be those situations where George is going to be faster than Lewis. I'm dying to get to the first race where they ask Lewis to let him by.
I don't know if you're ever going to see it.
Right? Exactly. Right? So it's like, is Mercedes willing to throw away a good finish, a top finish, a better than, expected finish, because they don't want to ask Lewis to switch places with George?
Well, I think it could happen for sure.
I can't wait. I really can't. And vice versa, the same way. I can't wait to hear George complaining, whining on that radio when they say they want him to let Lewis pass.
Yeah. Yeah. The only other person that stands out is Vladimir Bottas. Just because of the calendar. That's all.
Vladimir Bottas? Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, Vladimir. I call him Vladimir at my house.
The calendar hasn't come?
No, not yet.
What a drag. We really didn't talk a lot about this race. I think that's okay. I mean, the race was not particularly exciting. We had about lap and a half of excitement where Leclerc was sort of battling with Max right after the start. But after that, Max just laid down the laps that he needed to go sailing off with it. There was a little part of me though that felt like, hey, maybe toward the closing part of this stint, maybe like Vegas, Leclerc could start picking up some time against Max and maybe start making it a game again. But nope, game over. It's game over from the start.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but it's kind of been the season.
Oh yeah. What did you make of the gamesmanship, so to speak, with Leclerc letting Perez by to kind of aid their championship finish?
This is very surprising in my opinion. I was very surprised by that. And something you would never see in IndyCar, right?
No,
you never see that go down. And to let him by to try to get that 5-second gap, so they finished further up, so they could, help in the championship. It's kind of intriguing in a way that the box is thinking about that and going, hey, how can we help ourselves overall? And it's letting a guy by that has a 5-second penalty, knowing there's pretty much no way they're going to get a 5-second gap, and you're still going to finish where you're giving. So, in an announcer's opinion, it was kind of like, he didn't really give up anything. It was just a way to sort of try to help the team.
Yeah. So Perez had that penalty, like you mentioned. Was that penalty worthy?
He missed the apex by a mile and ran into the other car. So yeah, I think so.
He had lost control of the car, right? He wasn't going to make that turn. It was a little optimistic.
Yeah. And I think so I think it's a valid penalty. I was surprised they thought the penalty was going the other way at some point. I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah. Race was fine. I watched it live. I was surprised it started as early as it did. And again, I don't know that Formula One needs an hour and a half pre-race show, but I mean, if it sells and they getting people watching it, I guess that's fine. But watched it live. I have no intentions of watching it again, which sometimes I do, but I didn't rewatch it today. I have no intentions of rewatching it. Thought the race was fine. It is, however, one of my favorite tracks, right? The backdrop and how it looks. I like that track. I like watching them race around that track. It's also one of the ones that I enjoy racing in the games too, right? The Formula One game. And I think and it just got added to Forza Motorsport, which I've been playing. Hey, I call all these other guys Recce. Guess who's Recce? Me. I'm Recce.
I didn't know you were playing Forza.
I love Forza. My absolute favorite. It's the whole reason why I got an Xbox. So I could keep playing it. But I am Recce, apparently.
Do you have the newest one? Is that what you got?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Interesting.
The newest what? The newest game, not the newest Xbox.
Yeah, the newest game.
Yeah, not the newest one. So I've been playing. I love it. I love it. They have Road America. They've got Mid Ohio. They've got all the great races. Spa's in there. They've got Abu Dhabi was just added, and you can take the Cadillac LMDH cars out, and you can do all that stuff. So it's fun. It's super fun.
I'm gonna have to check it out because I know we have the game. Because I've got kids that play, but I've not been on
super fun. Yeah, super fun. I walked away from Gran Turismo, which I've been playing since last year around now. So,
okay.
But you got time to walk the grid with me, Timmy?
Yeah, let's walk it.
Let's do it. Pato Award named McLaren reserve driver for 2024. Shout out to Charlie Mack for waking me up to this fact that Pato has a super license, Tim.
Yeah, he does.
The question is how, right? Because obviously you're going to make your comparison to Colton Herta, which everybody, is great anticipation of that. Here's the math simply stated, and if you want to go online to find the super license points, you're more than welcome to. It's complicated. But here's the simple way of putting it. For Pato Award, 2024, fourth place, he got 10 points. This is championship standings. 2021, third place, gave him 20 points. Fourth place in 2023, which again gave him 10 points. That's 40. And that's what he needed to be eligible for a super license. Colton Herta has 32 points. He added 1 point this season with his 10th place finish in the championship. It's all about finishes in the championship.
About consistency.
Yep. Yeah. Year over year consistency, not even race to race, right? It's year over year. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. There's an update in McLaren v. Palou. According to the Associated Press, the headline reads, IndyCar champ Palou admits breach of contract as Spaniard tries to mitigate damages owed to McLaren. It's a hell of a headline. I'll put a link in the show notes, but essentially Palou's legal team is trying to argue that some of the revenue that McLaren claims they're losing is speculative at best. Lost future future winning or winning payouts and sponsorship and some other bonuses and some other things that click too. So it's all speculative at that point. Timmy, American Legion, sponsor of the number 10, speaking of Palou, last year will now be moving to the number 8, driven by Linus Lundqvist. My speculation is this is a precursor to DHL moving to Palou. That's my speculation, and I'll continue to say it until I'm proven wrong.
Time will tell. We'll see.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
And in the biggest big deal there is possible, Toyota unveiled the reworked Camry for the 2024 NASCAR season. Big deal.
Surprised it even made the grid walk. Stretching for topics there. That we had to put.
I had 2 there until Palou had the update and whatever else I had in there.
Yeah, the stuff that hit today for sure.
Pato. Yeah. I didn't want to forget Pato because Charlie Mack
saw him on air.
That.
Yeah, they showed him sitting on the sideline there, standing there during the race.
Showed him a lot.
I saw him once, and they never mentioned him after that. They didn't mention him once on the broadcast, but they showed
I watched the weekend, so I saw him a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I did
saw
not.
a lot out there. Timmy, it's all I got.
It's a good show. It's always good to see you, Dan. That sweatshirt is terrible, by the way. And
Go
we're
blue!
We're gonna have to get you a new one. I should have brought the flag today in my house, my Buckeye flag. But I guess there's always next year. We'll see.
That's what you guys have been saying for a couple of years now.
And here's the deal: you're not going to the Big Ten championship this year. You decided not to.
And I got a call first thing this morning saying, "Hey, we have an extra package. Are you going? Do you want to go?" And I don't. I have plans, so I'm completely out, and I won't even watch it.
I won't either, but my wife will, so I guess I'll watch by proxy.
That's so great. Go blue over You'll be rooting Iowa? Will you be rooting Iowa?
It depends.
Oh my God.
It depends on how things go. I don't know. We'll see what the day brings.
I've never rooted for Ohio State because I've been to a lot of these Big Ten championship games. I've never rooted for Ohio State, but I've never rooted against them either.
I knew that's what you're going to say.
Yeah.
I normally don't, but it just depends. Some days I just don't want to see them win. But
when I would go to the Ohio State games, those Big Ten championship games, I would wear all black. I would wear like a black pullover or black shirt or something like that. I would just wear all black.
Just to show that you're not...
not rooting for anybody. One year, just serendipitously, I was just wearing a purple shirt or had a purple shirt. And Northwestern was there. That was the year Northwestern was. And they were like, "Oh, you're rooting Northwestern?" I'm like, "No, it just kind of happened this way."
Wasn't thinking that far
ahead.
ahead.
This. Yeah, I didn't plan this.
Yeah.
So, And I had it on like Friday for our welcome party, so it wasn't even like I was wearing it for the game on Saturday. So all black again on Saturday.
All right.
That's all I got, Tim. It's good to
here.
see you. We will see everybody else again here in another couple weeks.
And we had lunch together this past week.
Yes, we did. It was wonderful to see you.
Yeah, it was good to see you. We saw you in the flesh.
Yeah, it was good to see you.
So
thanks everybody for listening. As always, be sure to engage with us on social media. Make sure you leave us comments in the comments section on our YouTube, which we get great comments there. Phil's also a Ohio State.
Yeah, I think he's going to stop listening after you wearing that sweatshirt.
Sorry, Phil. But that's that. And be sure to engage us there. We'll see you again in a couple weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.